In 1977, Star Wars gave us some of the most beloved characters in the entire galaxy. In 1980, we got introduced to even more sinister, robotic, and wise characters. Then in 1983, we got bears. This is the story of how some people hated the Ewoks. Welcome back to the journey. George Lucas has always said that Star Wars was made for kids. And although that statement isn't always held true, and yes, I'm talking about the talk fest about politics that went on during the prequels.
The bureaucrats are in charge now.
Yeah, kids would never care about that. Ultimately, kids love the simple story of good and evil, redemption, and finding a bigger adventure than what your surroundings are. These themes are the groundwork for a millennia's worth of children's tales, and why children gravitate to these bigger-than-life adventures about regular people doing extraordinary things in the most perilous of situations. They can identify with the heroes and put themselves into the story. This is what makes Star Wars so timeless, and even as you grow older, it spans generations. So when George Lucas was getting ready to make the third installment of the movies, he already had a story in place and an outline of how he wanted it to unfold for the final act. In the original Star Wars, George Lucas had great creative partners in his wife Marcia Lucas and producer Gary Kurtz. They were sounding boards and gave Lucas excellent notes on the script and in the edit, which we see in the final result today. That creative team with Marcia Lucas and Gary Kurtz went into The Empire Strikes Back and was now joined with director Irvin Kershner and screenwriters Leah Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan. And again, with this creative team, they all steered Empire into a success and made it a great movie that twists the plot, explored the characters and the Skywalker saga without having it just be a rehash of the original Star Wars. But when going into the pre-production for The Return of the Jedi, George already had a story idea in mind and was trying to get the same team together for the Return of the Jedi movie. But at that time, his marriage was on the rocks and Marcia didn't contribute or play a big role in giving George notes on the story, which had been a huge part for the first two movies and their success. When reading the story treatment, producer Gary Kurtz decided to bow out, really due to creative differences with what George wanted to do with the story, and Gary thought George was going in the wrong direction for the final chapter. George Lucas also had trouble getting the directors he wanted for Return of the Jedi, and by now, we all know that he wanted directors like E.T. and Jaws director Steven Spielberg, Elephant Man director David Lynch, and even The Fly director David Cronenberg, which all three would have given us very different films. But he went with director Richard Marquand, who was known for his dramatic films such as Eye of the Needle, and was known as a director who focused on the actors and performances and less on the fancy camera moves or effects. And here's a fun fact: he even made a cameo in The Return of the Jedi in this scene. So we can all say that the ATST driver figure is director Richard Marquand. But without George's original crew coming back, with the success of now 3 hit films, if you include the audience love of American Graffiti, the studio and everyone at ILM was never going to say no to George and the vision of what he saw for the last installment of Star Wars. And the main thing that most everybody didn't like about Return of the Jedi, from critics to hardcore Star Wars fans, and even George's closest friends, was the Ewoks. Now, George originally wanted the Wookiees to be in the final battle of Endor, but when they calculated how much that would be to try and get that many actors at a height of at least 6'7", get those costumes made, and fit the Wookiees into the story along with Chewbacca, it was going to be a daunting and expensive task. But George liked the idea of having a tribal civilization who isn't technologically advanced taking down the tech-savvy Empire. So that kind of ruled out the Wookiees as they became very skilled engineers over time. So George cut them in half and the Ewoks were born. But how did the Ewoks get the name Ewoks? Well, according to George Lucas, the look of the Ewoks came from a breed of dog called the Brussels Griffon. So with that breed of dog as the inspiration, designer Stuart Freeborn made them come to life. But how did the name Ewoks come to be? Well, George Lucas said that he inverted the Wookiee name, the Ki and the Woo, into Ewok. And he also had inspiration from a Northern California Native American tribe called the Miwok. Thus, the name Ewok came from those two sources. And if you're enjoying the content so far, please hit the like button. That does support the channel. And also, please consider subscribing. And please visit thepadawancollector.com, where you can see blogs, bonus material, and you can visit the Collector Depot for accessories that you may need for your collection. But the way the Ewoks fit into the story that George was creating, a lot of people in pre-production had said that was some of the reasons they either said no to the project or had creative differences with George. Most of the mainstream critics, like Roger Ebert and Leonard Maltin of Entertainment Tonight, loved it, but there were a number of critics who slammed the movie, one even calling it a 2-hour commercial to sell toys, calling out the Ewoks especially. Another critic said that Jedi was overly lavish with its happy ending and failed to explore the darker and more meaningful implications that Empire started. But most critics blasted the acting and the Ewoks, with this quote saying, "A resurgence of infantile imagery with the swarms of teddy bear Ewoks. If the trilogy has grown it all over its course, it's in terms of commercial calculation." You can look up critique after critique of newspaper critics completely slamming Return of the Jedi, and each of them naming the Ewoks as pandering to kids and commercialism. But you know what? As a 6-year-old kid, when I first saw Return of the Jedi, I absolutely loved the film. In fact, if I was gonna rate the Star Wars movie based on my 6-year-old self, they would be in this order: Return of the Jedi, the original Star Wars, then The Empire Strikes Back. Now, that's not the order that I have them in now, but Return of the Jedi was my first real connection with Star Wars. I was only 3 when Empire came out, so when I went to the theater and saw Return of the Jedi, then got the read-along books, then the action figures, besides the main characters and Jabba the Hutt, the Ewoks were my favorite, and I even remember my sister getting her own Ewoks action figures and stuffed animals. I even remember watching the Ewok Adventure as a little kid, although I never watched the Ewoks cartoon when I was little. George did mean to add the Ewoks for children, and it worked, and I'm glad he did it. The Ewoks are my generation's Jar Jar. Kids whose first experience with Star Wars was the prequels, they love Jar Jar, and I can relate to them with me loving the Ewoks. I loved Wicket and the interaction with Leia. I loved the adventure they had with the Ewoks and how they helped them out and those contraptions that they built to help the Alliance. I was sad when the Ewoks got hurt, and I cheered when the Ewoks defeated the Empire on Endor. So thank you, George. And I think that's why I never paid attention to what the critics say about movies. Is Return of the Jedi the best in the series? By far, no. But any movie that I see that can grab my emotions, let me escape for a few hours, that gives me hope, imagination, and a chance to make my own adventures, well, that's how I gauge a movie. And when I saw this as a kid, this was the best film of all time. So what's your opinion about this? Do you love or dislike the Ewoks in The Return of the Jedi? And 40 years later, what's your opinion of them now? Well, I do have a few more figures to complete my loose line of the Star Wars Kenner figures made from 1977 to 1985. So if you need to go back and start with episode 1 to watch how I got here, please do so. So this week, since we're talking about Ewoks, I decided to get Rumba. Rumba was released on the Power of the Force line of toys in 1985 on the 92 cardbacks with a collector's coin, and also on the Tri-Logo cardbacks without a coin. He comes with his spear, which is the same spear that comes with Wicket, and a hood. There are 2 variants of the spear, with one having a dimple indent right above where the shaft and arrowhead connects. But both should have a good amount of flex and bend back without being brittle and breaking. The hood is a unique design to Rumba, and most notably with the design on the forehead. And there should be a rubbery feel to the hood, no paint application to the brownish gray mold, and there should be a number molded into the inside top crown. So far, I have seen the number 3 on hoods. If there are other numbers, please let us know down there in the comments. And right now, a loose action figure complete with the spear is pricing out on eBay at a high of $200 to a low average of $170. So this one is a bit on the expensive side. And I was able to find a great looking example from the guys over at Orange Droid Vintage Toys, plus the collector's coin. The figure looks absolutely flawless, with no color loss on the areas which usually loses paint, like the eyes, nose, teeth, and belt. The spear has that Kenner bend and give, and when in a close-up, has the same mold marks as the reference photos online. The hood has a rubbery give to it that bounces back into shape and also has the mold mark with the number 3 on it. The coins are averaging at a high price of $35 to lows at $22. And the coin that we got is in super great condition and came inside a protective case. And this coin says, an Ewok warrior who uses simple Ewok weapons to protect the planet Endor. So let's mark this figure and coin off our list that we got from Orange Droid Vintage Toys on Facebook, and we got that for a total of $239 flat with tax and shipping included. And let's finally place this figure in our case from Collector Displays. And I thought I had 3 more to go. I forgot to count Warrock. I have his coin, but not the figure. So now I have 4 more figures to go. Endor Luke, the AT-AT Commander, Warrock, and the Vinyl Cape Jawa. But I'm still close. So thanks for going on that journey with me to explore more about how George Lucas got into the mind frame by the time Return of the Jedi came around, and how he created the Ewoks and some of the critical backlash the Ewoks got. And just for the record, I love the Ewoks. 4 more figures to go. So please like this video if you found it interesting. Subscribe for more Star Wars vintage content. Visit me on all my social medias and become a member to support the channel and make videos like this possible. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time. Oh, tail slate. If you're new to the channel, check out the welcome video, or just check out the next episode. And please subscribe if you want to follow the journey. And remember, there is no shame in being a Padawan.